So URL based access control can be circumvented. So they implemented some access control based on analyzing URLs, and this can also be circumvented. So this website has an unauthenticated admin panel at /admin, but a front-end system has been configured to block external access to that path. However, the backend application is built on a framework that supports the X original URL header. So to solve this lab, access the admin panel and delete the user Carlos. So this one was a bit tricky to imagine. So let's access the lab. Let's take it to our browser. So here there is an admin panel. So they have given it directly. But if I click on this, it says access denied. Let's say, for example, you do not find this /admin anywhere in the page. So what do? You go to either burp suite, HTTP history, go to this home page, right click, engagement tools, discover content. So this will try to get more endpoints using some word list. Or if you want to go for a terminal tool, you can use something like GoBuster and change this URL to this URL. Okay, Control C, Control V, hit enter. So it is using the word list common.txt. This is from seclist, and as you can see, it found the admin panel. So I'm going to stop this, and as you can see, the error was 403, forbidden, right? So this is because we don't have any access or permission, we are not part of their users and not part of their devices. Sometimes the server trusts their own devices, right? So we are going to try to exploit that part. In the lab, they said some front-end system is configured to block external access to the path. So front-end system doesn't necessarily mean front-end server. So it means some system that is taking the request first and deciding whether to send it to the backend or not. In our case, that front-end system can most probably be a reverse proxy. So what is a reverse proxy? So to understand that, first you need to understand what a proxy is. So you can say proxy is a burp suite, right? But here you need to understand it like this. So here there is a proxy. So our proxy is burp suite, and that application also has a proxy that looks something like this. So what usually happens, proxy is something that will send the request on our behalf. So that is what a proxy is. And reverse proxy works in the similar way, where it receives the request on this server's behalf. So here it takes the request from here and first sends it, and then after everything happens, our proxy receives the response, right? First send the request and receive the response. So this reverse proxy works in reverse order. First it receives the request and then sends the response. So this is the flow of the things that are happening with the proxy and reverse proxy. Okay, so we send a request and it reached this server's reverse proxy. Does all the requests that we send go to the backend server? Not exactly. So all the requests that we send from here are analyzed with certain rules. For example, this reverse proxy contains a web application firewall which either filters or rejects request or allows the request based on some web application firewall rules. Only the filtered request will reach the backend server, and the backend server trusts this reverse proxy to implement that filters properly, okay, to make the backend server secure. So since this backend server trusts this reverse proxy, so whatever this reverse proxy asks, the backend server sends anything that the reverse proxy asks, and those replies will be sent back to us. So the reverse proxy that contains a web application firewall will have some rule like this, okay, something like rule block request to admin. In reality, the rules can be in the form of a plain text. I will take the example of Nginx. So Nginx web application firewall. So first of all, I'm going to say if it is a plain text rule list, okay, so it will look something like this. So it will say rule equals to block request to admin, and condition URL path contains this, and action block the request and return 403 forbidden. So if it is Nginx, so I will say Nginx web application firewall. The code that we implement looks something like this. So it says location if it is /admin, then return 403 with this message. So this is exactly what happened here, right? So there is one more case where this reverse proxy doesn't send any response back. So the situation is, what if it decides not to send any request? So it can simply drop the request right here. So I will send it and it will drop and I will receive no response. What kind of response that we get? We get a 444 response. So the 444 response code will look something like this in a Nginx firewall that doesn't reply anything back to the client. Usually we go to Mozilla Web Docs, but if I go here and check this list, I will not find anything regarding 444. But if you Google for 444 response code, then you will find this URL which says http.dev/444. And this actually contains a status code 444 no response. It is an unofficial client error specific to Nginx. So that's why it is not shown here. So that's one more case that it can happen. But here is the catch. Even though the web application firewall blocks this /admin, that doesn't mean backend application also blocks this /admin. The backend application can run this with proper permissions. So if we bypass this reverse proxy somehow, we will get our admin access or admin panel, because backend server trusts this reverse proxy to guard this backend application. So let's say reverse proxy is bypassed, then backend server will respond anything that the reverse proxy is asked. So how to bypass this reverse proxy? So let's go to burp suite, right click this /admin request, send it to repeater, and let's go to repeater. And as you can see, the /admin in the URL is being blocked. So you cannot keep /admin in the request URL. Keep this /admin somewhere in the request. So in this case, we create a new header that's called X original URL. So this is a special header that has the same effect as this URL. The backend application or the server will give more priority to this URL rather than this. So if I keep it something like this and just keep a / over here, then once this whole request reaches the server, only this will execute, not this. But in reality, what happens is this header is actually generated by reverse proxy before sending it to backend server. So what actually happens is I send some normal request, okay, without any tampering, and once it reaches the reverse proxy, this reverse proxy will add X original URL header and sends it to the backend. So the purpose of this header is generally to preserve the original requested URL that is requested by the client. So I requested it, the reverse proxy adds this and sends it to the backend, right? So since I requested, it will preserve my original URL and sends it to the server. So this header has more priority than this one. So this is what happens in step by step in the reverse proxy. I send the request. So what will reverse proxy do? First thing it does is it will filter the request URL to implement access control. So no user must get admin privileges except admin. The second thing it does is creates this X original URL header and adds it to the end of this request. Okay, it will add somewhere around here. So what does the value of this header contains? So the value of header contains whatever endpoint that is there in the request URL. For example, if I had robots.txt, so this robots.txt will be removed from here and added over here. So whatever endpoint I keep here, that will be copied from here and added over here. So now in the third step, sends it to backend server. Last step, whatever reply is given by the backend is given as response to us. So to bypass this, we create this header and send it. It goes to the reverse proxy. The reverse proxy sees this request, checks this URL, but doesn't check anything else, and most probably keep an X original URL header over here and sends it to the backend. So once it reaches the backend, so it will see the request and sees this X original URL header, and the backend server thinks since it bypassed the reverse proxy, there's no problem. Let's give the page and we will get the page. So instead of giving /admin over here, which would reply access denied, I'm not going to keep /admin over here. I'm going to keep it over here and send it. And as you can see, we got 200 OK response now, right? So what does this page contain? So I will render it. As you can see, I got the admin panel over here. So let's go back to the code. And here, as you can see, if I type admin, I can see admin panel. And if I scroll down, I can see users, and the user list is Wiener. And this one actually deletes the Carlos user. So what if I keep this URL instead of this? So will it work? Let's try it and find out. So let's send this URL. And as you can see, it says missing parameter username. But we sent the parameter here. So the thing is, this X original URL only cares for the endpoint, not the parameters in that endpoint. So the endpoint initially was /admin. Endpoints, I'll just keep a heading over here. I'll keep / as an endpoint, which gives us homepage. /admin is an endpoint which gives admin panel, and /admin/delete will give some response, but the main function of this endpoint is to delete an user. So we need to mention which user that is. And where do we mention it? We cannot mention it in this X original URL header. This X original URL must only contain the endpoint, not the parameters. So it doesn't care even if you keep the parameters. It will just ignore it. So even if you keep it here, you should also keep it here. So it will just completely ignore this, and whatever is kept here, this will be sent to the application. So this is the endpoint. First it will travel. Okay, I'm going to delete this to reduce confusion. It will travel to this endpoint, and once it reaches this endpoint, the application looks at the URL and sees this username parameter and sees the value of it and executes based on that. So let's send this. As you can see, we got 302 found and it redirected to /admin. So let's go back to /admin, and you can also remove this and send it. And as you can see, user deleted successfully. And hope you enjoyed this video. Check out the description for payloads and other resources. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.